Between the Wyoming primary, President Biden signing the Inflation Reduction Act, and the looming midterms, the end of summer is anything but quiet here in D.C. My guest tonight's the host of the podcast No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, appropriately named Brian Tyler Cohen, who's up late with me tonight here on the Final Five. I mean, it would make sense that you would host that podcast. Good to see you again.
Good seeing you too. Thanks for having me on.
Did you ever think that you would see the day where Democrats would mourn the loss of a Cheney at the ballot box?
I didn't. Look, I think in terms of Liz Cheney, this whole thing, you got to think of it twofold, right? On one hand, it's disappointing that Liz Cheney lost in the sense that she was only one of a handful of Republicans left willing to publicly acknowledge objective reality. So this really does represent the end of like what's being called your dad's Republican Party. You know, this is the Marjorie Taylor Greene party now. That's it. Transformation's done. And so whereas we used to be able to argue policy, at least within the confines of reality, we don't even have those confines of reality anymore. Like, you can say they did 2 recounts and 3 audits and they all confirmed that Trump lost the election, and Republicans will just, you know, plug their ears and say la 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 la, Trump won. So that's one half of it. But the second part is more broadly, whether Liz Cheney won or lost, I don't believe that our salvation here is the Republican Party anyway, no matter what wing of the party it is. Like, the only thing that's going to save us from a party that traffics in election denialism, that doesn't believe that women have, you know, rights to their own bodily autonomy, and that wants to ban contraception, interstate travel, and books, and wants to ignore climate change. The only thing that's going to help us is electing more Democrats. Like, Liz Cheney voted with Donald Trump 93% of the time. So we can lament the fact that we lost one of the last Republicans who was willing to stand up to Donald Trump. But I think we also have to acknowledge that our broader goal here is to make sure that we don't let that party anywhere near the levers of power.
Is she being delusional when she says she's considering a run for president in 2024?
Probably. You know, I think that her running in a primary wouldn't amount to much, and her running as an independent may do damage by giving those disaffected Republicans an out by voting for another Republican instead of voting for a Democrat. So, you know, I'll leave that to her to figure out.
Right.
But, you know, I do believe her when she says that her goal is to make sure that Trump doesn't end up anywhere near the White House. So I think if there's any chance that she could be a spoiler and help him, she's not going to do it.
So, look, you talk about the fact that she voted with Trump so much. There is an ideological purity test that undoubtedly in the GOP, but even in the Democratic Party, where we saw this back and forth when it came to getting some sort of social spending plan, which we got the Inflation Reduction Act. It took a lot of cajoling, a lot of negotiation with Joe Manchin to get to this point. You talked with President Biden a couple of months ago. You interviewed him at the White House, and that was well before these talks happened. The president's approval ratings are still quite low. They're on the uptick just a little bit. You know, if you're a Democrat and you pass this legislation, how do you harness the energy, and how do you keep this relevant and atop the headlines going into the midterms?
I think now is the important part, and the part that Democrats inherently are not good at. This is selling our achievements. And right now you can't accuse Democrats of not delivering, because just in the last few months, we've seen Democrats pass the CHIPS Act, the PACT Act, gun legislation for the first time in decades. We have the American Rescue Plan, of course. That was the first major piece of legislation upon Democrats taking office. The infrastructure package. We've recovered every job that was lost during the pandemic. We're at a 50-year low in unemployment. And of course, we have the Inflation Reduction Act, which is the biggest clean energy bill in the history of the world. It finally allows the government to negotiate lower drug prices. It has some provisions that would finally make the rich pay their fair share. So I think in terms of delivering, we've got it. Now comes the hard part for Democrats, which is messaging. And I think going out there and just making sure everybody from the White House, every Democrat, every senator and congressperson is going out and explaining what we've done, that's half of it. And I think the other half is focusing on the issue that's especially salient for us, which is Roe and these Republicans' efforts to strip women of their bodily autonomy. So I think as long as we keep hammering that home and making sure that people are well aware of what's on the ballot, you know, we'll see a repeat of what happened in 2018 when the election became a referendum on Republicans trying to strip health care away. Well, now we've got another issue where Republicans are decidedly on the wrong side of, and I think as long as we can keep that top of mind and keep reminding people, you know, we've already gotten a taste of a preview of that from Kansas. And
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was just thinking about Kansas there, because that that was. You had abortion on the ballot there. But just back to one thing, because we know that voters vote with their pocketbooks in many cases. And if you have an Inflation Reduction Act, but by the midterms, you're still seeing people paying high amounts for things that used to cost them lower prices, that's a tough psychological hurdle to get by if you're a Democrat trying to win voters in Pennsylvania or many of these other swing states.
I agree that it's not going to be easy, but a few promising points are that we're seeing these prices come down now. You know, we saw almost 60 straight days, or I think 60 exactly straight days of gas prices coming down. It's also important to remind people that, you know, these prices are happening, these high prices, high gas prices and inflation are happening everywhere. Every country in the world is dealing with 10, 11, 12% inflation right now. We just saw record inflation in the UK. Gas prices are obviously rising. So, you know, it's important to recognize that it's not just a domestic issue. We're not the only country in the world facing these issues, but we are doing a good job at bringing these prices down. That's one half of it. Another point also is, you know, I think that these issues, like I said, when you focus on issues like Roe, I think that they have more salience with people. I think that they have more potency with people. And I think that, yes, of course, the economic issues, the pocketbook issues are important, but when you're dealing with something so important as like one's right to their own bodily autonomy, I think that completely trumps like what we would refer to as these normal pocketbook issues.
Well, I mean, there was speculation that wasn't going to goose the numbers as much as I think Democrats hoped they would. And then again, in Kansas, you have that voted down in a quite large margin. So, hey, there's about 1,000 things I could talk to you about. We're out of time. So, Brian Tyler Cohen, the podcast is called No Lie Fight, where you find out where you get your podcast. Hey, good to see you again. Thank you.
Good seeing you too. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. And the Final Five is back after this.